your host today. I have a really special episode for you here today. I saw that a lot of people like the Meyer lemon info growing video and kind of a history lesson, so I think I'm going to start a kind of a new series. Every once in a while I'll do a video on a plant and I'll show its history. I haven't figured out what to call it yet. Might call it Blast from the Past or something like that, but it's just going to be a episode or a series about like how a plant has entered into my area, the United States, or come from another area. If the plant was original to, or came into another area, I probably wouldn't do it because I'm focusing on United States when it comes to plants in the USDA coming in and how they were cultivated in the United States from when it was started. So keep that in mind. I'm going to be focusing on just plants here in the States that were brought in from other countries or have been cultivated here for, a couple hundred years. So this is a Washington navel orange tree here, and you can see there are flowers on it. It's flowering right now. It has tons and tons of little tiny fruit on it. Very attractive to the ants, which not really a good thing, and it's continuing to flowering. These are all new growth spouts here on the top, and they have new buds of flowers on them too. So this plant is going to be flowering probably for the next month to 2 months. But here's the history on this plant. This plant was originally brought to the United States by the USDA in the 1870s, around there, and there was a woman named Elizabeth Tibbets. Now, the Tibbets and her husband, she was out of a job. Like many women were in that time. They didn't have jobs. They were stay-at-home wives and stuff. And she had a friend who was a lawyer, and they lived in Washington, D.C. at that time. And her friend, who was that lawyer, also worked was the garden and grounds of the Department of Agriculture. So basically, she talked to her friend, who was the name was William Sanders. So William Sanders worked for the Department of Agriculture in 1870, and she knew him, and so they moved then to California. They moved to California around 1870. So around the same time, they were in Washington, D.C. for a while, and then she contacted her friend William Sanders by mail, and asked him to give her a citrus variety or an orange tree that he thinks would do good, or that was special, I guess. So he sends her the Washington navel orange tree. Now, at that point, the Washington navel orange tree was not named the Washington navel orange tree. It was just an orange tree that was originated. It was originally imported from Bali, I believe is how you pronounce it, Brazil, or Bala, Brazil. So it was imported from Brazil, and the tree was at that point just known as an orange tree. It had its own name in Brazil, but it didn't carry over here to the States really. Its scientific name is Citrus Sinensis because it's an orange, but it didn't really have a name. So when Elizabeth received it in her yard, she received 2 plants, and these are plants that can't be grown by seed because they are seedless. So they were grown by budwood, or also bud grafting, where you take a leaf off, and you snip off a branch and you insert a bud into a joint where there wasn't a bud before, and it starts to grow. But so basically at that point she had 2 trees. She planted both of them and they did extremely well. The same crop that was being propagated in Washington, wasn't sent to her, was sent also to Florida. There was 2 different shipments. Elizabeth received 2 trees, and a bunch were sent to Florida and other growers in California, all of which died. They all did extremely poor, but by some happened miracle, I guess, Elizabeth's trees that were bud grafted and sent over from Brazil were a very, very strong strain of the navel orange tree, and they then received a lot of attention by the United States agriculture, and they went to go collect more sample or more budwood from that tree because they're such a resistant and very vigorous plant. So in turn, Eliza Tibbet's trees are the mothers of all Washington navel orange trees in the United States. So basically what happened was they took the buds, and Eliza sat there and and she agreed because it was her friend, and then they propagated a ton, and that led to the expansion of the California orange tree belt, or Orange County basically, in Southern California, and also led to the expansion of the navel orange growing in Florida. So it was quite a historical event that this took place, and kind of a miracle at the same time. Now this got its name as the Washington navel orange because William Sanders worked in Washington D.C. It was imported to Washington D.C., where it was grown in greenhouses and propagated. So the tree that originated in Washington D.C. was adequately named, or appropriately named, the Washington navel orange, even though they can't grow in Washington. So it's kind of an ironic name. Yeah, you're never going to find one of these in Washington growing outside. It's just too cold, and yeah, they were grown in climatized greenhouses back then, where they used geothermal heat and stuff like that to keep them alive, but and fires as well in the greenhouses. But so that is a little brief historical background of the plant. If you want to go look and see the actual mother tree that's still alive, it is still alive to this day. In California, in LA, it was moved to Magnolia and Arlington Avenues in Riverside, California. So if you want to go check it out and you're actually in California at some point, go check it out. It's surrounded by, I believe, an iron fence with a plaque, and it is still alive to this day, still bearing fruit, and it is a historical marvel pretty much for all navel oranges in the United States. So that's that little tidbit for you. Now I'm going to talk about just the basic growing habits and everything of the tree. So basically the tree is kind of a bushy, low-hanging tree. When fruit come onto these branches, that they will sag down and bend to an extreme amount. You'll be surprised that they won't break, because the wood of these trees is very, very strong. Now for this size tree, this is about maybe 1 to 2 year old little sapling that's grafted, of course, because they are either done by grafting or bud grafting. So those are the only ways to really cultivate this type of tree. And they really do well in the root pouches. So I have it in a root pouch down here. Really helps with, they're kind of susceptible to root rot just like any other citrus, so it really helps keeping the root rot down, gets the air exchange and everything, and it really seems to like it. It has roots just bound up in here and pruned away. The air pouch is also pruned, so that's also a good thing. They prune away all all of the roots that try to keep expanding. So it's done really well in this root pouch. I also have something called a lazy gardener in here. If you guys wanted to know, I know I have that on my Meyer lemon that I did a video on before. Well, this is a different one. The other Meyer lemon got a disease and didn't make it, but and it has a plug. The plug goes into the power, and the plug heats a coil, and this thing just sucks up water. So it's kind of a pretty rudimentary system, but this thing really likes it, and it always keeps the bottom nice and moist. So it doesn't get too overwatered, but it enjoys a nice top watering every now and then. I also keep this thing fertilized well. You need to keep your trees fertilized well when it comes to during the growing season, and even throughout the winter. This plant's not going to stop growing throughout the winter because I bring it inside underneath the grow lights. So basically, I fertilize in the spring, and I'll fertilize once or twice in the spring. Sometimes because I use organic fertilizer and it can break down quickly, and sometimes it'll wash out of the soil faster. I use an organic citrus tone fertilizer, so you can find that pretty much any big box store. I also keep it fertilized during the summer. Is another time I'll fertilize it, usually probably around July. Around there is a good time. That's around mid to late summer. And then I'll do it once in the fall, probably around September or something, because by that time the tree will already be inside the house. It'll be underneath the grow lights, and it will be needing some food. So I'll give it some food then, and it'll continue to produce these shoots. Not so much flowers, but it will flower maybe once or twice more. This plant is prolific at making flowers, and the scent, if you could smell it, I wish you could smell it, because man, they just smell beautiful. They smell very fragrant, with just very perfumey. It's very, I don't know, it's a hard aroma to describe, really. You have to smell it to really understand what it smells like. But it will probably produce flowers for a lot of this time. It'll bloom on and off through its growing stages. It'll grow shoots out, flower, and then it'll stop, and it might set on some fruit. At this stage, you don't want to make sure there's not too much fruit on this thing. I might allow 1 or 2 oranges to grow, but that's about it. It's a very small tree, very young, so you don't want a ton of fruit on here. It'll sacrifice the amount it'll actually grow in a year. So I'm going to keep it nice and compact, little fruit, and keep it well fertilized, okay? This plant likes a really well lit location. Full sun is best. Of course, if you're bringing it from inside where it wasn't full sun or under grow lights, make sure that you give it kind of a shady spot for a while and then switch to full sun, because they do burn on the leaves very easily, especially the older leaves, the older greener leaves. They do burn. Here's one here. That's sunburn. I did acclimate this in shade before, but they're very sensitive, so they'll burn pretty much no matter what. You might get a little bit of burning if you leave it in the shade for a really long time and then slowly acclimate it to more and more light. You might get away from the burning, but it's a lot of time. You have to sit there and move your plant, and I usually don't take that much time, or I usually am impatient. So, but yeah, very bright sunlight, adequate watering. It needs to be moist all the time. Can't really dry out. They'll start dropping leaves like mad if you let them dry out. So monitor the moisture in the soil with either a moisture tester, your finger down into the soil media, but to about here, to about there, on your knuckle or your second joint there. And if you feel moisture, then definitely don't water it. But if you don't feel moisture, give it a nice soak. These root pouches, like I said, dry out a little bit faster, so it's easier to underwater them, but it's a little bit more difficult to overwater them. That's why I have this in here, so that it has a constant source of moisture at the bottom, so it can constantly pull it up. The Lazy Gardener is inexpensive when it comes to that. It's a very wonderful device, but it's very expensive. So keep that in mind if you go looking for it. It's on Amazon, My Lazy Gardener. They're kind of expensive, so keep that in mind. The things are like 25 bucks a unit or 20 bucks a unit, but for the fact of that it makes your potted fruit trees do really well. I took the risk and bought one, and it's been working out pretty well. So anyway, guys, I think that's pretty much it. That's the basic growing tips for this. You know, pest management, just give it a light or a more of a heavy, I guess. Give it a nice neem oil and Dr. Bronner's soap spray every now and then. Spider mites love this type of plants, so that's the pest management. Aphids a little bit sometimes, but for the most part, the neem oil spray will keep the spider mites and also the leaf miners off of the plant. So anyway, guys, I hope you liked this episode. Hope this was informative. Hope you liked the little history lesson. And I'll see you again next time. Alright? Alright. Talk to you later. Like, comment, and subscribe. Bye, everybody.